What happens when a veteran journalist refuses to play by someone else's rules, especially when that someone happens to think she owns the room? That's exactly what unfolded on The View that Tuesday morning, when a heated on-air debate spiraled into one of the most talked-about showdowns daytime TV had ever seen. It started as an ordinary taping. Cameras rolled, lights glared, and the panel was mid-discussion about a celebrity controversy that had everyone buzzing. Then, out of nowhere, Joy Behar decided to change lanes, and the conversation shifted from gossip to grenades. Tamron Hall was halfway through making a point about media responsibility when Joy cut her off. "You know what really gets under my skin?" Joy said, leaning forward with that trademark smirk. "People who haven't been in this industry as long as I have trying to lecture the rest of us about journalistic ethics." The audience's laughter died instantly. Tamron blinked, momentarily unsure if she'd heard correctly. "Excuse me, Joy. Are you implying my 15 years in broadcast journalism don't count for anything?" Joy reclined in her chair, voice syrupy sweet but sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm just saying, sweetheart, some of us were anchoring news long before you learned how to read a teleprompter." The word sweetheart hit the table like a slap. Even Whoopi, sitting at the center, shifted uncomfortably. Tamron's voice dropped an octave, calm but dangerous. "Did you just call me sweetheart while questioning my credentials on live television?" "Relax," Joy said with a laugh that wasn't funny. "I call everyone that. Don't be so sensitive." Tamron's jaw tightened. "You can call me whatever you like off camera. But on this set, we're professionals. You don't question someone's credibility just because you don't like their opinion." The tension was electric. Audience members leaned forward. The control room light flickered red. The producers knew this wasn't just another argument. It was the beginning of a meltdown that would go viral before lunchtime. And as Joy leaned back, eyes gleaming, she delivered a line that would ignite everything. "Maybe you should listen more and talk less." "Tamron." The silence afterward was deafening. Even the studio cameras seemed to pause, waiting to see what would come next. But Tamron Hall wasn't about to stay silent, because what she said next turned that set into a battlefield. Tamron's eyes locked on Joy's, her calm melting into something sharper, steel beneath the smile. "Listen more and talk less?" She repeated slowly. "Joy, if experience only taught you to talk over people, maybe it's time you start listening for once." The studio audience gasped. Even Whoopi glanced toward the control booth, silently begging them to cut to commercial. But no one moved. Everyone, crew, co-hosts, viewers, knew this was TV lightning. Joy tilted her head, that famous smirk hardening. "Careful, Tamron. You're stepping into deep waters. I've been holding this show together since before you were even part of the conversation." Tamron leaned forward, her voice unwavering. "Joy, let's get one thing straight. Barbara Walters built this platform. You just happened to sit at the table. Don't rewrite history." For a moment, time froze. Then came the sound. Sharp, unmistakable. Joy's hand, slamming the table so hard the mugs rattled. "How dare you minimize what I've done for this show?" She shouted, her voice slicing through the silence. "I've been the heart of The View since day one." Gasps rippled through the audience. Even by The View's fiery standards, this was beyond routine TV sparring. Tamron rose to her feet, every movement measured, calm. The kind of calm that precedes a storm. "You see, that's the problem, Joy," she said quietly. "You've convinced yourself you own this show. But we're co-hosts, not subjects in your empire." The words hit like thunder. Whoopi tried to intervene, voice trembling slightly. "Ladies, we don't need—" But Joy wasn't listening anymore. The stage lights glinted off her eyes as she snapped, "Don't lecture me about teamwork. You think you can walk in here and challenge me? I made this table what it is." Tamron stepped closer, unflinching. "And yet, the moment someone challenges you, you fall apart." That line landed like a grenade. The air in the studio was suffocating now, thick with disbelief, tension, and something rawer. Fear. The audience didn't know whether to clap or cover their mouths. And then, as if the temperature dropped 10 degrees, Joy leaned forward and hissed, barely above a whisper. "You're playing a dangerous game, Tamron. I can make your life very difficult." For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Tamron straightened, staring right into Joy's eyes. "Did you just threaten me on live television?" she asked, voice clear enough for every microphone to catch. That single question sent shockwaves through the room, and before anyone could recover, Joy doubled down. The words, "Did you just threaten me on live television?" echoed through the studio like an alarm. Every pair of eyes, from the front row audience to the cameraman behind the glass, snapped toward Joy Behar. Joy's face froze, her smirk faltering for the first time. The realization hit her. Millions were watching. But pride is louder than reason. She straightened, chin lifted, and said, "That wasn't a threat. That was a promise." Gasps, actual gasps. The studio wasn't breathing anymore. Even Whoopi's hands shot up like she was calling a timeout. "Ladies, please, let's take it down a notch. We're professionals," but Tamron's eyes never left Joy's. "Professionals," she repeated, her voice slicing the air cleanly. "A professional doesn't intimidate her colleagues to protect her ego," Joy scoffed. "Oh, please, this is television, honey. You think this is about professionalism? It's about ratings, personality, and who can hold the spotlight. If you can't handle that, maybe this isn't your league." The audience booed. Low, uneasy, the sound of people realizing they were witnessing a train wreck in slow motion. Tamron's expression didn't waver. She took a step forward. "So your definition of television is bullying people into silence?" "Good to know," Joy laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the rafters. "Bullying? You're overreacting. I'm just being honest. Maybe you're not used to honesty." Tamron blinked once, slowly. "Honesty isn't the problem, Joy. Cruelty is." You could feel the shift, the moral balance swinging. The crowd was no longer laughing or gasping. They were siding, and Joy felt it. Her voice cracked slightly as she snapped, "Don't you start painting yourself as some victim. You come here acting superior, acting like you're better than everyone else." Tamron didn't even blink. "Better? No, Joy, just different. I don't need to insult others to prove I belong here." Joy's jaw tightened. "You think you're some saint because you talk about ethics and journalism? Without that smile and that perfect TV face, you'd be nobody." The audience audibly gasped this time. Phones went up. Producers panicked. Whoopi's head dropped into her hands. Tamron took a slow breath, looked right into the camera and said, "And there it is. The mask off. The real Joy Behar, the woman who confuses cruelty with honesty and thinks respect is optional." Joy's face drained of color, realizing how far she'd gone. But Tamron wasn't done. She turned toward the cameras fully, her voice calm, clear, lethal. This is what workplace harassment looks like. And it's happening right here, right now, for everyone to see." The silence after that line was almost holy. Nobody moved. Nobody dared. And then, Joy took one step forward. What she did next would send the entire studio into chaos. Joy took a step forward, her heels echoing like thunder across the set floor. The audience went dead silent. Nobody even dared whisper. Her voice dropped to a low, trembling hiss. "You have no idea what you're messing with, Tamron. I made this show what it is. I can make your life miserable." For a split second, Tamron just stared at her, and then gave a small, controlled smile. "Did you just repeat your promise live on air?" "Good, because everyone here heard it this time." The audience broke into murmurs. The tension was suffocating, thick enough to slice with a camera lens. Whoopi's chair squeaked as she tried once again to calm the storm. "Ladies, please, we can discuss this after." But Joy wasn't hearing anyone. Her face was red, her breathing uneven, and her words spilling faster than she could control. "Oh, stop pretending to be the victim. You think you're the moral compass of daytime TV. You waltz in here with your degrees and your journalism awards like we're supposed to bow down?" Tamron's tone stayed even, quiet, dangerous, like a fuse burning towards something big. "No one asked you to bow, Joy, just to behave like a professional. That's not too high a bar, is it? Joy's jaw clenched. You think you're better than me? She shouted. You're not. You're just another face who got lucky. There it was. The insult. The one line even her co-hosts couldn't ignore. The studio reacted instantly. Gasps, whispers, even a few shocked boos from the crowd. Tamron tilted her head, her voice now cold enough to chill the room. Without that comment, Joy, you might have had a way to walk this back. But you just turned a disagreement into national news. Joy's lips trembled. Not from regret, but fury. Don't you dare lecture me on consequences, she spat. This show has survived presidents, scandals, and egos bigger than yours. It'll survive you too. Maybe, Tamron said softly. But will you? It was the calmest line in the loudest room. And somehow, the one that hit hardest. The air buzzed. Security shifted near the stage doors. Producers were shouting from behind the cameras to cut to commercial. But the director froze. He knew he was filming the biggest unscripted moment daytime TV had ever seen. And then Joy, trembling, furious, pointed toward Tamron and yelled, "Security! Get her off my set!" The crowd gasped as the words hung in the air like smoke after a blast. Whoopi stood instantly. "Joy, you can't," but Joy cut her off. "I can. This is my show." That sentence, that one single claim, changed everything. Every reputation, every headline, every camera still rolling, Tamron looked her dead in the eye and said calmly, "You just proved every word I said." And right then, the producers stepped onto the set. The moment producers stepped onto the stage, it was like watching firefighters run into a burning building. The audience held its breath. Nobody blinked. Nobody even dared to move their phones, afraid they'd miss what came next. A senior producer, headset crooked, hands trembling, tried to keep her voice calm. "Joy, let's just pause for a second, all right? We're live. Let's cut to commercial." But Joy's eyes were locked on Tamron like she didn't hear a word. "No, she doesn't get to walk away after that. She came for me, right here, on my set." Tamron gave a short, humorless laugh. "There it is again, your set. Joy, this is the view. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people watching, to the women who built it, and to the truth. You don't own that." The audience erupted, some clapping, others whispering, others just staring, wide-eyed. Joy's face turned crimson. "You're lucky I'm even letting you finish your sentence," she hissed. "Letting me," Tamron shot back. "You don't let people speak, Joy. You bulldoze them. You've been doing it for years, and everyone here just plays along because they're afraid of your tantrums." That last word, tantrums, cracked something open. Whoopi tried to interject, voice heavy with exhaustion. "Enough, both of you. This isn't helping anybody. We're live. The world's watching." But it was too late. Joy turned to Whoopi, her temper fully unhinged now. "Don't you defend her. I've carried this show while the rest of you sit there waiting for punchlines." The gasp from the audience was sharp and collective, like the sound of air being sucked out of the room. Whoopi's expression changed instantly, the calm anchor gone, replaced by disbelief. "Wow, you just turned on everyone now?" Tamron crossed her arms. "So it's not just me then." The producers were frantic now. The stage manager gestured wildly for the camera crew to pull back, but the director shook his head, whispering, "Keep rolling. This is history." Joy, realizing her words had alienated everyone on set, tried to regain control. "You know what? If she wants to leave, let her. Security, get her off this stage right now." 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the set, hesitant, confused, waiting for a cue from the producers. One whispered, "Are we actually doing this?" The producer in the headset shook her head sharply. "Do not touch her. Not unless she's a threat. We're still rolling." Tamron looked between them, calm, composed, almost pitying. "You see what's happening here?" she said, her voice steady, cutting through the noise. "You're proving my point with every second that passes." Then, with perfect poise, she unhooked her microphone, letting it fall gently to the desk. The sound echoed through the studio. "I won't be dragged out by security," she said, "but I will walk out on my own terms." The audience stood, half in awe, half in disbelief. The tension broke, replaced by scattered applause. Joy pointed furiously toward her. "Good. Don't let the door hit you on the way out." Tamron turned, looked her square in the eyes, and said softly, "You could have been a mentor, Joy. You chose to be a warning." And with that, she walked toward the exit, each step slower, stronger, deliberate. Cameras followed, catching her silhouette disappearing behind the curtains as the lights dimmed. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then one voice from the crowd broke the silence. "She handled that with more class than the whole panel combined." Joy Behar stood frozen, pale, shaking, and realizing the one thing she'd never wanted to admit. For the first time in years, she wasn't the star of The View. The instant the stage door swung shut behind Tamron Hall, The View's studio seemed to exhale for the first time in 10 minutes. The audience sat frozen, half clapping, half stunned, unsure if they'd just watched history or a career implode. Backstage was chaos. Producers barked orders into headsets. PR reps were already drafting statements, and somewhere in the distance, Joy Behar stood motionless at the table, microphone still live, face drained of color. "Cut the feed." A voice screamed from the control room, but it was too late. The cameras had caught every glare, every insult, every word of the threat. By the time they finally faded to black, clips were already spreading online. Within minutes, the internet detonated. Team Tamron trended worldwide. Viewers posted slow-motion clips of Joy slamming the table. Memes flooded X and TikTok. "Sweetie, sit down" became a slogan overnight. Inside ABC headquarters, executives huddled in silence. No spin doctor in the world could fix this cleanly. Joy tried first. In a backstage corridor, voice shaking, she told a producer, "We can edit that, right? We'll trim it down." The producer only stared. "Joy, that was live." The color left her face. Meanwhile, Tamron sat alone in her dressing room, the noise of the world muffled behind the door. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from journalists, friends, and even a few silent colleagues who finally dared to text, "Thank you for saying what we never could." She exhaled slowly, eyes still steady. She hadn't planned a revolution, but she'd sparked one. Across town, a news chyron blinked onto millions of screens. Live on-air meltdown. The View erupts into host showdown. Joy watched it from her car window, city lights reflecting off the glass. For the first time in decades, she wasn't laughing, and while the headlines spread, ABC made the call every insider had been whispering about for hours. "Tomorrow," an exec said quietly, "there will be an investigation." But the public, they'd already decided. Tamron Hall had walked off with dignity. Joy Behar had walked into disaster. Still, one question remained, the one that would haunt the network for weeks to come. Would Tamron ever return? Or was that the last time she'd ever sit at that table? By the next morning, the world had already taken sides. The confrontation wasn't just trending, it had taken over everything. News anchors dissected it, podcasts replayed the audio, and late-night comedians were already writing punchlines. Tamron Hall stood for professionalism. Joy Behar trended beside it, for all the wrong reasons. ABC's PR team barely slept. By sunrise, they issued a statement so polished it squeaked, "The View values respectful dialogue and is conducting an internal review regarding yesterday's events." Translation? Someone's in trouble, and it isn't Tamron. Inside the network, phones rang non-stop. Advertisers wanted reassurance. Viewers demanded accountability. One executive summed it up in a single exhausted sentence. "We didn't air a talk show yesterday. We aired a crisis." Meanwhile, Joy Behar stayed silent. For someone famous for quick comebacks, her social media pages went dark. Behind the scenes, she tried to draft an apology, but every version sounded hollow. "It was just heated television banter," she muttered to her publicist. Her publicist shook her head. "Joy, calling someone sweetheart on air isn't banter. It's bad optics, and it's worse ethics." Tamron, however, didn't rush to speak. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke louder than any statement. Every network wanted her reaction. Every journalist wanted the quote. And she gave them nothing. Just a single Instagram post. Respect isn't requested. It's required. It went viral in hours. Talk show hosts from across networks weighed in. Some defended Joy as old school. Others praised Tamron's composure. But the overwhelming reaction was clear. Viewers had seen the difference between experience and entitlement, and they were done confusing the two. Back in the ABC building, a quiet conversation unfolded. "Do we suspend Joy?" a board member asked. Another replied grimly, "If we don't, we'll lose the audience before Friday." And as the network deliberated, Joy made one final mistake. She went live on a podcast, unfiltered, unprepared, and still fuming. "I didn't mean it that way," she said. "People are too sensitive these days." The clip spread faster than any apology ever could. That night, Tamron got a call. From a number she hadn't saved, but one she instantly recognized. Joy Behar was on the line. Tamron stared at the phone, her screen glowing in the dim light of her apartment. The name on it made her pause. Joy Behar. For a few seconds, she just let it ring. Then curiosity, or maybe closure, won. She answered. "Joy." On the other end, Joy's voice cracked slightly, the confidence gone, replaced by something raw. "Tamron, listen, we both said things we shouldn't have. The media's twisting it. I just wanted to talk woman to woman before this gets any bigger." Tamron leaned back, calm as a mirror. "It's already bigger, Joy. The world saw everything." "There's nothing to twist," Joy sighed, exasperated. "You don't understand how this works. I've been in television longer than—" Tamron cut in gently. "Longer than I've been alive? You've mentioned that part." There was a silence. Not angry, just heavy. The kind that happens when truth finally lands. Joy tried again. "Look, I didn't mean to threaten you. I was frustrated. Things got out of hand. Maybe you could post something. Say it wasn't that serious?" Tamron's tone sharpened. Professional, precise. "You want me to downplay workplace intimidation? To protect your image?" Joy hesitated. "You know how the audience is. They'll forget in a week." Tamron's voice turned cool. "I don't want them to forget. I want them to remember. Because that's how things change." On the other end, Joy's breath caught. "So that's it then? You're going to make me the villain?" Tamron paused, just long enough to make the silence sting. "Joy, you made that choice when you turned a debate into a threat. I just happened to be standing in the light when the cameras caught it." Click, the call ended. Within an hour, Joy's publicist leaked to the press that the two had a cordial conversation. But the internet wasn't buying it. Tamron never confirmed or denied it. She didn't have to, because sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's strategy. The next morning, headlines screamed across every network. Tamron Hall declines to return to The View. ABC launches internal inquiry. Inside the studio, Joy sat at the empty table, her reflection staring back from the glossy surface. For the first time in decades, the laughter that usually followed her every line was gone. Whoopi entered quietly, resting a hand on Joy's shoulder. "You know, Joy, some storms you can't joke your way out of." Joy didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth was already echoing louder than any punchline. Because the story wasn't just about two women. It was about what happens when power forgets accountability. And across millions of screens, one image kept replaying. Tamron Hall walking off that set. Calm, composed, unstoppable. The caption that trended beneath it said it all. "Dignity always wins the rerun." The next morning, the ABC building looked like a courtroom instead of a studio. Executives shuffled into the conference room, eyes heavy, voices hushed. The walls themselves seemed to buzz with one name: Tamron Hall. In front of them, a paused still from the broadcast sat frozen on a screen. Joy Behar, mid-rant, finger-pointed, anger twisted across her face. Underneath, a caption from a viral tweet: "This isn't the view anymore. This is the warning." An executive cleared his throat. The clip's been viewed 42 million times across platforms. Sponsors are threatening to pull out unless we issue disciplinary action. Silence. Finally, the network president spoke, voice clipped and final. Effective immediately, Joy Behar is suspended pending review. We'll issue the statement within the hour. Across town, Joy sat at home watching the very show she once dominated. A guest host now filled her seat. The audience still laughed, but not the same way. The laughter sounded lighter, freer, like the tension had finally left the room. Her phone buzzed again. Hundreds of messages, most unread. Then one caught her eye. It was from Whoopi. "You built a legacy, Joy, but today it's on you to rebuild your respect." Joy stared at the screen for a long moment. For the first time in years, she didn't have a comeback. Just a quiet, unfamiliar emotion. Regret. Meanwhile, Tamron sat across town in a different studio. Cameras pointed toward her, but this time it wasn't the view. It was her show. A special broadcast titled "Standing Your Ground in the Workplace." When the director gave the cue, she looked straight into the lens. No script, no teleprompter. "Just truth. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness," she began. "It's the loudest way to say enough." Applause filled the set. Not from producers chasing ratings, but from people who understood. Clips from her speech flooded the internet. Even her critics admitted it. She had turned chaos into clarity, conflict into change. Back at ABC, executives watched silently. One of them muttered, "She didn't just win the argument. She rewrote the rules." That night, Joy released a statement. It was brief, carefully worded, but one line stood out. "In the heat of live television, I lost my composure and my perspective. I take full responsibility. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start." As for Tamron, she didn't respond publicly. She didn't have to. Her last on-air words had already cemented her legacy. Integrity isn't what you say when the cameras are off. It's what you do when they're still rolling. And somewhere between that last shot and the millions who replayed it, a truth settled in where can be loud. But dignity? Dignity is thunder in slow motion. Weeks passed, but the tremors from that confrontation still rippled across television. Clips kept resurfacing, think pieces kept multiplying, and every newsroom in America dissected one question. Had daytime TV finally met its reckoning? ABC moved fast. A new code of conduct memo leaked to the press. All on-air talent will undergo workplace ethics and conflict resolution training. Viewers called it the Tamron Clause. Joy returned after her suspension, walking onto the set to polite applause instead of cheers. She looked smaller somehow, not in stature, but in certainty. The mug that once clinked with confidence trembled slightly in her hand. Her first words back weren't jokes. "I've learned that talking for a living doesn't mean you stop listening. I crossed a line and I own that." The audience clapped. Not wildly, but genuinely. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the first step toward it. Meanwhile, Tamron thrived. Her special episode on workplace respect became the network's highest-rated segment of the month. She'd turned confrontation into conversation, and quietly into a movement. When asked if she'd ever return to The View, she smiled faintly and said, "Some tables you walk away from. Others you build yourself." That quote became a headline, a mantra, a master class in graceful exit strategy. Back at The View, the dynamic was different. Co-hosts gave space, producers enforced civility, and the laughter returned. Lighter this time, honest. Whoopi, ever the realist, closed one episode with a wink to the audience. Guess we all learned that the view looks a lot better when everyone gets one. Joy chuckled softly beside her. Humbled, human, changed, and somewhere across town, Tamron watched that moment on a monitor, smiled, and switched it off. She'd already said everything she needed to, because sometimes the most powerful mic drop isn't thunder, it's the silence that follows it.